Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Stand Alone, where we really dive into what it takes to go from ordinary to extraordinary. And, as I think about bringing guests into our community, I always want to make sure that I'm giving a voice to the voices that can really, have walked the walk, that are not just talking about it, but have lived through it and are still doing things to push themselves to the outer limits of what is capable. And I cannot think of a better guest to join us than Siri. So Siri Lindley, you're amazing. A world champion triathlete and a coach, but not just any type of world champion. When you think of a triathlete, you think of someone who will endure. And then you hop on a bike and you endure more. Then you jump in the water and you endure more. And I want us to break this down because you have had the honor of being ranked as the #1 triathlete in the world. But, when you think about your humble beginnings, and this is what I want to break down for our audience today, because we often see greatness and we hear like the sound bites of people talking about, a quote that they say in the now, but it's really important for people to go and to dig into the story and the come up so that we can relate to wherever we find ourselves in your journey, in your story, so that we can really appreciate who we have in our presence today. So I want to thank you for joining us today. And I know this is going to help the lives of so many because they can relate to it in any part of your journey because it's so profound. So I want to take it back to the Siri that, was 23 years old and was thinking, I don't know what's going on, and what's so powerful about your story is that on the outside, everything looked great, looked wonderful, looked perfect. But Siri, you were like, something was unraveling inside of you. And I want for us to talk about this so that people can see how we tie it back together. Don't get afraid when you're unraveling. We can package it up and it can become a better gift, right? So talk to us about 23-year-old Siri. What was she going through when you had that moment where you set an impossible goal for yourself when you felt like, man, I'm in the worst situation of my life? Can you talk to us about that today?
Yes, and first of all, Sabrina, I think you're incredible. So I feel so blessed to have the opportunity to share this time with you and your listeners. And I do believe that my story can help because at that time, it actually started a little bit earlier. I was in college at Brown University, and just like you said, on the outside, it looked like I had it made. Going to this amazing Ivy League school. I'm varsity field hockey, ice hockey, and lacrosse. I'm getting great grades. But on the inside, I was slowly dying because I had just extreme anxiety and paralyzing fear. And in order to deal with this, I had developed the most insane case of OCD. I'm talking, it would take me an hour to leave my dorm room because I'd be flicking the lights on and off, on and off, on and off, on and off until I could get some horrible thought out of my mind. Or washing my hands just over and over until I could finally have a moment where I could have no thought at all. And I seriously got to a point where I didn't know if I could manage another day. And this is when my greatest mentor, Tony Robbins, I got a hold of one of his first books. And there was just this one line, where focus goes, energy flows. And I read it at the right time because in that moment I thought, everything that I'm fearing, getting sick, my parents getting sick, dying, something horrible happening, I thought, the more I think of this, the more I'm attracting it. Like I'm actually making it happen. And I kind of was killing myself with my fear, with my anxiety. I mean, it was bringing that towards me. And I realized, like, I'm the only person that can change what I'm feeling. You know, all I was focusing on at the time was what was missing, what I feared, what I didn't want to have happen, what I had no control over. And I want you to think about, your patterns of thought. Are you constantly focusing on what's missing, what you don't have, the problems, what's wrong, what you have no control over? Because if you are, I bet you are feeling how I was feeling then. So I made the commitment to myself to say, I'm going to focus on what I have, my health, my strength, an amazing education, people that love me. I'm going to focus on what I love and what I want to create, which I actually had no idea of what that was because I was so wrapped up just in my fear and anxiety. And I decided to focus on what I just realized I had all the control over, which was my own experience of life. And so I started taking charge of my life and figuring out, who am I? And one of the first things I discovered was that I was gay. And that was a hard pill to swallow because it's like, how am I going to deal with this? But I was just happy to know something about myself, like a truth about me that I could come to terms with and start getting comfortable with. And everything was kind of going along okay until 2 years later, my father called. And he said, somebody told me that you're gay. I couldn't possibly have a daughter that's gay. I beg you, tell me right now that this is not true. And in that moment, first of all, I was heartbroken. I felt like everything I'd accomplished, everything I had become until that point in time meant nothing now that I was gay. But I also had to make a decision. And I had to decide, do I want to keep this relationship with my father or choose me? And I had to go first in believing that even as a gay woman, I was lovable, I was worthy, I could achieve great things, I could inspire people. I had to choose me. And my father hung up the phone. I told him, it's true, I'm gay. He hung up the phone and I didn't hear from him for the next 2 years, nothing. But this is when I discovered triathlon, and I hadn't done a triathlon, but I showed up and I was watching a friend of mine race, and I thought, my God, this is so incredible. Like, there's people of all ages, sizes, abilities, but there was a common theme. They were all pushing themselves beyond what they thought they were capable of. And they all looked like they were just so alive. And I thought, this is how I'm going to find me. This is how I am going to show and prove to myself that I'm strong, I am capable, I can do great things, I can inspire other people. And that was that deep why I had behind taking this on. But I didn't know how to swim. I'm 23 years old, never swum before, and asked my friend to coach me, did my first race. I came in dead last. I completely humiliated myself. I got off the bike. I ran like half the 5K with my helmet on. All I knew was how to sprint after a ball, and you run as fast as you can to get a ball. You pass it off, you get a little rest. So that's how I ran the entire 5K. But I had never felt so alive in my entire life. And it was after that race where I sucked. They were actually cleaning out the transition area. People were going home. Everybody was packed up when I finished. And I said to my mom, I'm going to be the best in the world in this sport. She kind of looked at me like, oh my God, my daughter's insane, which
yes.
It was so important to me to take that on. Sorry, that was a long, long way.
No, it's so good, but there's like so much in there that we need to unpack and then just go a little deeper, because there's some key things that were said to you. And, one thing that's amazing about Tony Robbins is that he's so profound and he's everywhere. And I hope he knows that, like, it's so important for him to be everywhere because he never knows where his words might fall into the mind of a person who really needs him. And it's funny because I relate to this with you. I remember being in university and I was like in such a hard time in my life. And I watched a commercial on him and I'm like, wait, what is going on? Why is this guy so happy, so energetic? And that was the moment where I attached to like his words. And, he talks about fear. And I want for you to just go into this a little deeper for our audience, because, when I think of you, what you really were able to do was you were able to like look at your fear, you had self-doubt, but you were able to overcome it. And this is what happens to a lot of people. They seem to think that, if I have fear, it's telling me don't do this, but no. You're right now we're listening to the number one triathlete in the world. I want everyone to like absorb this. And she had enormous amounts of fear. And when you were in that moment, you learned when you picked up that book that it's the meaning you give to something, right? It's the meaning that we attach to events in our lives that send us this way or send us this way. We become a warning of what shouldn't be or an example of what could be. And so in that moment too, what I think is so powerful about your story is that you made a shift to say, I'm going to set an impossible goal right now. You didn't say, you know what? Something is wrong. There's, you could have went down that path and it's so logical to go down that path. But in that moment, you set an impossible goal. Like you were running a race and you were, failing, but you demonstrated hunger in that moment. Someone saw that in you. And then that coached you to another level of yourself. Could you talk about that? Because not only, number one, she set a goal in that hard time. She set a hard goal, but then you found a coach, right? And when you found this coach, he helped to take you to a next level, but it wasn't easy, right? And he said some magical words to you when you were struggling. And I would like for you to like talk about this because, when we're vulnerable, and we invite a coach into our life, they don't tell us what we want to hear. They don't tell us what we want. They tell us what we need to hear, and it wakes us up. So if you could share that with us, how did you meet this coach? Like he saw the hunger in you. That's why he wanted to work with you. You ended up going to Switzerland, which was like, another pivotal moment in your life. And then he said some words that also attached deeply to you. And I think it's very important that people hear these words because it will help us go to the next level of our lives.
Right. I'll start with his words. And this happened, we were training 6 to 8 hours a day. It was the most agonizing work I'd ever done in my life. I actually thought like this might kill me. And after every day, I would just be in tears and exhausted and could barely move my arms or legs. And I think the reason why this hit me so deeply is it connected me to how I've gotten to where I was by doing exactly what he said. And I said, I don't think I can do what you're asking me to do today. And he looked at me and he said, find a way. And it struck me because just like you're saying, I was dead last in that first race and I set this impossible goal and there was no logic or like it was like, how could someone that doesn't know how to swim, that's already 23 years old, which is old for this sport, like there's no logic in you setting this goal. But what I did is I decided to find a way. And I think that's why his words, 8 years later really hit me. It's like, I know how to do that. And it starts with, when I took this goal on, two things had to happen. I felt I needed to let go of trying to be what I thought everyone else needed me to be, to make them happy, to make them feel confident in where my life was headed. I needed to just be authentically me. And because when we live authentically, we bring 100% of who we are into life and we leave nothing behind. But the second thing is I needed to become someone willing to fail. And understanding that, like, I was going to fail a lot, obviously, in the beginning. I was going to fail over and over and over again, but I needed to focus on the fact that when we fail, that's when we learn. That's when we grow. That's when we make progress. And that is what was necessary for me to achieve success. And I needed to be willing to fail if I wanted to succeed, ultimately. So becoming willing to fail and really looking for every lesson within those failures and disappointments. But also, I just want to bring up, because you mentioned fear. And as you know, in college, debilitated by my fear. Fear will always be there. And the meaning I started giving fear is it's an invitation. Fear is an invitation to move towards something magnificent in your life. And in order to get there, you've got to dance with your fear, bring it along with you. Think about what fear does. When you're afraid, you get super laser focused. Right. You have to bring every ounce of what you have inside of you into the situation to give you, the courage to move through it. So fear was an invitation, always. Anything that seemed really scary, it's like, I must do it because that's going to take me to the next level. And just giving it that meaning was so empowering for me. Because a lot of us give us, like you said, Sabrina, oh, if I feel afraid, it means I shouldn't do it. For me, it's like, if I feel afraid, that's my invitation to take my life to the next level. So when Brett saw me, my coach, he was only coaching world champions and Olympic medalists. And at the time, I was not any of those, far from it.
And you didn't know how to swim. Like, this is incredible.
Well, I learned how to swim, and I had
at that time
along the way.
Okay, gotcha.
I mean, I'm thinking that one day I'm going to be competing against former Olympic swimmers in the swim section. And I just immersed myself. I got a coach. I trained, hours and hours a day on the swim. But my coach saw me at a World Cup race. I turned professional, and he was walking home. His athletes had won the race, finished the race. He's walking home to his hotel, and he sees me, and this is what he said to me. He said, you were in like 30th place, but you were absolutely killing yourself to come in 29. Yeah. And he said, I like that. That's hunger. Because let's think about this. If we're always comparing ourselves and thinking, unless we win or we're second or third, we're nothing. And that's just, you can't live that way. So for me, it was always, I just want to be better than I was the day before. If I'm doing the best that I can with what I have in every single moment, that's a victory for me. And if I try to be better than I was yesterday, that's getting me where I want to go. And so he took me on, and like I said, his training was insane. I got my butt kicked every single day. Like, these athletes were incredible, and I sucked. But what he taught me in delivering 8, 9, 10 hours a day of this training, after he said, find a way, I knew I'm just going to do the best that I can with what I have and try to find a way. And it was really brilliant because every day he would give me something that seemed impossible. But every day I would do the best that I could, and I proved to myself that what seems impossible is really possible. Because how can you ever know what you're truly capable of if you're not trying to do what you don't think you can? Mm-hmm. Every single day. You have to get out of your comfort zone. You have to do what seems impossible in order to really get a sense of what's possible for you. And again, I always talk about going first. You get to go first in deciding what's possible for you. You get to go first in deciding what you're capable of or what life you want to live. And this whole journey, I never gave up on this feeling, even though I didn't necessarily believe it, that if I just tried to be better than I was the day before and did things that I didn't think that I could, that one day this could be possible.
Yeah. And I think, also, I work with a lot of Navy SEALs. I had the honor and privilege of working with a very powerful Navy SEAL, and he had this concept of the 40% rule, where when you think you're done, you actually are just 40% there, and you can keep on going and drive it. And a lot of psychologists, if you go and do reading, there's this principle of like a third wind and a fourth wind, where when we think we're done, we're not. And, this is the genius of your coach saying, find a way, because, the first time you were in Switzerland and you were given a task to complete, you literally completed the task and you were exhausted to the point of just, you said, crying, and I'm like done. I'm not capable of doing anymore. And then they told you to do what? If you could share that with people, and then you had to find that third wind and the fourth wind, and then you'd show up the next day and you're like, what is going on here? So even when we think we're done, that's where average people fall off. And I really want people to get this message. When you think you're done and you wrap it up, you robbed yourself of the opportunity to really discover what you have inside of you. And that's why quitting is the most dangerous thing on planet Earth. Yeah. And, the Navies, they have the saying of not dead, don't quit. And it's something that I really attach myself to, but you have a live example of that. If you could share that with everyone, I would love for people to hear this, because it's a powerful lesson for people to grab onto, especially today.
And when I tell this, please know I am not embellishing. I'm not making this, because it's hard for me to even believe that I did it. But day one, I arrived in Switzerland, and we lived at the very top of the Swiss Alps in a place called Lausanne. And it's about 20 miles down to where the swimming pool is. And I thought, oh, okay, we ride our bikes, because we were supposed to ride our bikes down to the pool. And I thought, okay, that's fine. We're riding down the mountain. I can handle that. Went to a swim session, 2 hours long. Every single moment of it was just flat out. Harder than I've ever swum in my life, longer than I'd ever swum in my life. We finished a session, and I get dressed, I take my bike outside, and I looked at my new training partner and I said, where's the van? Where's Brett? And she laughed. She said, what? You ride home? You're not going to drive home. You're going to ride home. And I'm like, oh my God, like I'm exhausted. And she said to me, she said, go with Jane. Jane sucks. And I'm like, oh my God, that's so mean. She's telling me that someone sucks. But I thought, thank God Jane's here. Like, I'm so glad that Jane's here. And so I find Jane, and we start riding. And within the first 5 minutes, Jane has dropped me. And I'm thinking, my God, if Jane sucks, like, what am I? But I dragged my butt up this mountain. It took me like 2 hours, to go 20 miles. That's how steep it was. And I get home and I run a bath and I'm starting to eat something, and there's a knock on the door. And it's Brett. And he says, time to run. Get your run stuff on. We're leaving. And I thought, okay, this has to be like 5 minutes. He's going to look at my form, so he knows what to do tomorrow. Anyways, we get upstairs, tells us all to get in the van, drives us down the 20 miles to the bottom of the mountain, tells us to get out. And he peels out and yells out the window, see you at home. I had never run over 10 miles in my life at this point in time. And I have to run up this mountain 20 miles after I had, trained harder than I ever had. About 3 hours, 4 hours, whatever it was later, I limp home. I get on the phone and I call my mom and I say, I can't do this. It's just like, I can't even imagine that I'm still standing right now. I can't do it. I started crying, and she said, Siri, don't you understand? He was testing you. You did it. You made it home. Now everything's going to be great. And so that gave me some comfort. I was able to sleep that night. Next day, same exact thing. Mm-hmm. Next day, same exact thing. Different look, like 3-hour hard bike ride followed by, 2800s on the track. Like every single day was just agonizing and terrifying. And my body, I just thought there's no way that any human being can sustain this. But it showed me. That's when when I said, I can't move my arms, I can't move my legs. And he said, find a way. And it's just what you're saying, Sabrina, that we think that because it's never been done before, or you've never done it before, it seems impossible. But that's where you have to look at the impossible and say, let me just give it a try. Let me just see if I can do it. And what you find is that you are so much more powerful than you could ever imagine. And it's the mind that stops you. And I was in a position where I had to find a way. It was find a way or go home. And my dream was too important to me to go home. And so you're right. And with my athletes, I have a lot of athletes that race Ironman. Like, I've had people quit the minute they blow up. And when they blow up, they feel that physically, mentally, emotionally, there's nothing left. And I tell them, you're going to blow up probably 30 to 40 times in an Ironman. So when you blow up, all you have to do is kind of just, slow it down, take a drink of water, collect yourself, and then get right back into it again. And that's just like life. You're going to have moments where you're going to have to step back, just a moment, and then you bring yourself right back in. And when you do that, when you move through the blow-ups, when you don't give up at that point when you think you're done, that's when the great strides forward are made.
I love this. I love this so much. That's why it's so great. You coach Olympic medalists, you coach people to get them and to push them to their greatness. And I think it's so important for coaches to have pushed themselves, to have endured this. So when they're speaking, it's coming from a place of, no, this is what it actually takes. It's a certain certainty that you possess, that you're not negotiating with a quitter. Like there's no option here.
No option.
And it's kind of like what we have to do with ourselves. We have to cut that negotiating voice in our head off and then commit. And, I wanted you to talk about this because, like we said, you set a hard goal, you got a coach. And why is it so important for us to have strong coaches in our lives? People that can say that stuff. And you gave this, I heard this story about you when you were running a race and your mom was so proud of you and she was coaching you. And then your coach looked at you and said, you haven't won yet. You haven't won yet. And I love that. I love that because it's the mom that makes us feel good. But in that moment where we feel too good, you see this happen in competitions, you celebrate too early and then it unravels. Could you talk about that, about being someone who is strong? You're really good now at what you're doing, but you still are open to being coached. You still have someone screaming at you and pushing you and in a good way. So if you could talk about that, that would be wonderful. Because a lot of people get, very emotional and they can't handle coaching. Mm-hmm. If you could talk about why we need to be open to that.
And it is hard sometimes to hear, you feel like you are just giving everything you have and then somebody's telling you have more. Like, that's hard. But if you really are determined to achieve whatever it is you're working at achieving, or to live life at your highest potential, we must have someone that is stretching you. And, we can all get comfortable sometimes. And I'll use a sporting example, but say I wanted to run a 2:45 marathon. But I'm training every day that are hoping to run a 4-hour marathon. I'm never going to run that 2:45 marathon because I'm not surrounding myself with people that are really pushing me to become more and to stretch and to become faster. We have to surround ourselves with people that are really pushing us to grow, pushing us to find more, pushing ourselves to become more than what we already are. And I think as a coach, here I am, I'm pushing my clients to do things that are really uncomfortable. I'm pushing them to become more. I can't sit here and think that I'm great where I am and I have no more. Like, I expect the same from myself. I will push myself as hard as I'm pushing them. And that means getting a coach, someone that's going to keep me accountable, someone that is going to demand more from me. And I know that sounds uncomfortable. It does. But the question is, are you here to just be as good as you are now? Or can you consider the possibility of just how great you can be? Can you consider the possibility of, yeah, you might be having an amazing impact in the world right now, but what if there's more? You have a responsibility to share your gifts with the world. And that responsibility means that, yes, you can share what you already know now, but there's much more. So having a coach, I mean, all my coaches actually really encouraged accountability. And what that meant is that whether they were there in front of me, pushing me to go harder, go faster, or I was all alone with no one around me, I would push just as hard. I would be just as focused. I would demand just as much from myself. And I think that we as humans, if you don't do that, if you always do your best when you're surrounded by people that are watching, that's great that you do that. But what about when you're all alone? Yeah. I want to know that you are going to give the same, whether you're alone or you're surrounded by 10 people that are watching. And I think having a coach encourages that, and they will really push you to valuing that personal accountability and understanding how powerful that is.
Yeah, that is like coaching. The truth is that every good coach will know from your results if you're practicing in private, if you're doing it on your own. And you can't fool a good coach, right? You could come up with some great stories. It's just it won't resonate, right? So I love this. And then we'll take it to the other thing that you did. So you set a hard goal, right? You got a coach, but then you also were coachable, right? You modeled, and you talk about this, about modeling success. And when you didn't know what to do, you literally modeled someone's behaviors, but you also say, like, you have to model how that person thinks too, not just what they're doing. When you were learning how to become the world's greatest triathlete, you were like stretching when they were stretching, eating what they were eating, but you took it another level and you said, I started to think like how they think. And I think that's where the gold is. Could you talk about why we need to not just find someone who can guide us, but then we have to be open to being coachable and modeling it so we can get to the place where we're destined to be?
Absolutely. And success always leaves clues.
Yes.
And if you are looking to achieve something great and somebody else has already done what you dream of doing, you need to study them. And I believe that, especially in sports, but in everything, I actually believe this in business, that 80% is mental. 80% of it is mindset, and 20% is everything else. But so I had the number one triathlete in the world at the time was a woman named Makili Jones from Australia. And I literally moved to Australia. This sounds very stalkerish. I promise you it wasn't. Moved to Australia to hopefully get in proximity of her. So I could watch how she trains, watch how she answers questions when people ask her questions about training or mindset. And we ended up becoming friends. And she rented out a room in her house, and it was like this perfect opportunity to really study how she ate, when she ate, how much water she drank, when she stretched, how she trained, but then really trying to get inside her mind and ask her questions about, how she handles those moments where she feels like it's over, but knows that she can't give up. And really, you want to learn what is the pattern of thought in these great achievers. How do they think? How do they reframe difficult situations? How do they overcome challenges? And in learning these things, you take, and I've always modeled I've modeled the best coaches. I kind of take things that I learn from them and then create my own strategy around things. But you absolutely must. Don't think that it's not valuing yourself to study another person that has already achieved what you hope to achieve. That's smart. That is a way to accelerate your process in getting where you want to go. So modeling, so incredibly important. And you can also study people to learn. You talked earlier, Sabrina, about, are you an example or are you a warning? You can study warnings. You can study, maybe for me, there was an athlete that would on one day win a race and was absolutely extraordinary, but on the next day she'd quit halfway through the race. Studying that and realizing, okay, what's going on here? What can I learn from that? I'm not going to do that, and I'm going to do this instead. So modeling, so incredibly important, and that leads to proximity. Surround yourself with people that are as passionate as you, that are as determined as you, that are going after the same thing as you. I coach athletes and I bring the best athletes in the world together to train with each other. Now, you would think that they'd be like, I'm racing that person this weekend. I don't want to train with her. I'm racing her. I want to beat her. But the culture that I've created here is that we bring together the very best, and you will be able to take each other to all new levels.
Yes, I love that.
And then on race day, may the best woman win. But instead of thinking about how horrible it is that you have to train with this person that you're competing against, let's use each other in a positive and supportive way to become even better together.
And it's that environment is so healthy when everyone is giving 100%. It's not like you have people in that environment that are like taking and not giving and contributing. Those are the most healthy, high performance environments that are around. I think your journey is so incredible, but what's funny about life is that the lessons don't stop, right? We feel like we pass a test and we're like, great, I got a blessing. And then boom, another lesson comes and smacks us and say, well, will you pass this one? In 2019, something really serious happened to you. You were diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia. And this is not something that is small. Tony Robbins in his new book, Life Force, which is amazing. He mentions you in this when he talks about this serious disease of cancer. And I think it's just, had you not have gone through and conquered fear and self-doubt in like the physical realm of competition, and then the psychological realm of overcoming and winning, would your journey have been different when you got diagnosed with this deadly disease where they told you you have less than a 10% chance of survival? And if you could share what happened, when that news hit you. And I believe the world is giving us information, right? It's constant feedback. And like we talked about in the beginning, it's the meaning that we give to that information. It can be used to help us, or it can be used to hurt us, right? So when you got that news that's very serious, what happened? If you could walk us through, because this is just constantly demonstrating how much of a winner you are, how much of a champion you are, how much, even though we've accomplished so much, we are still all being tested. It's not going to stop. So I think this is so incredibly powerful for people to hear. If you don't mind
Oh, of course.
sharing this with us, I think, it's really powerful for people to hear this, because this is what makes your story so inspiring to me.
Well, thank you. And first of all, I'm nothing special. So when I
No, you
share,
are. You
no,
are something
but
special. I
we
get what you're saying.
all we all have the ability
Yes.
to do the things that I've done. It takes courage, it takes belief, it takes determination. It takes you going first and deciding what life you want to live. But at the time, I mean, my life was everything that I dreamed it to be, everything that I'd worked 49 years to create. And I'm living life just so grateful, thinking it's all paid off. And then I get a phone call. And I'm standing in the kitchen. My wife is standing beside me. I put my doctor on speakerphone, and he says, "You have acute myeloid leukemia. You've got a genetic mutation. I've never seen anything like this. It's going to be really difficult to treat this." And it's like time froze, except my wife starts screaming out loud, tears flooding out of her eyes. And I look in her eyes and I think, I've never felt so loved before. I've never loved anyone as much as I love her in this moment. And it's like, I thought, I can go down this path that everyone's kind of making it sound like this is the end, or I can make my own decision. And I, in the loudest voice I think I've ever heard from me, said, "This is not my time to go. Everybody stop. I am going to survive and I am going to thrive." And everything just went silent. But that decision, and it's like the decision I made at 23 years old, I am going to be the best in the world in this sport. You make a decision, and that means that every thought you have, every action that you take, every decision you make is with that outcome in mind, period, regardless of what things look like. And everything that I had learned, I went back to, okay, I made the decision to become a world champion, and I did whatever it took to make that happen. Yes, it took 8-9 years, but I did it. Those sessions that I thought were impossible, but I did the best that I could, and I found a way. I proved that the impossible is really possible. All these things, and the meaning, I thought, no, this isn't the end, everyone. I'm going to tell you what this is. This isn't the end. This is the beginning, because this is happening because who I become through this challenge, what I learn, the insights I gain is everything that I need to achieve what I dream of achieving, and that's having an impact in this world, being able to make a difference in people's lives, being able to give hope, being able to connect people to their true strength. There's a saying, what you're going through now is preparing you for what you asked for. And my life at that time was everything I dreamed it to be, and I would walk around our property, and whatever you believe in, God, the universe, doesn't matter, but for me, I said, God, I just feel so grateful. I just pray that I can show people that they can go from suffering and despair to creating a life of their dreams. I want to have an impact. I want to touch lives in a beautiful way. That was my ask. And getting leukemia, immediately I gave it the meaning that, okay, well, I guess this is how I'm going to be able to do that. Because I will survive and I will thrive and I will have a message that can touch people in the way that I dream to touch them. Now, it's the hardest thing I've ever gone through in my entire life. And I have to tell you, my biggest fear, I mean, for 49 years of my life, I thought I am loved because I'm inspiring and I achieve things and I'm always giving and I'm always doing. And suddenly, I mean, this disease took me to my knees. I couldn't care for myself. I looked horrible. I had no energy. I couldn't inspire. I couldn't give. I couldn't do. I couldn't achieve. And I actually thought that my wife, who I loved more than anything in the world, was going to leave me because I wasn't the woman that she fell in love with. And what I realized, and this is like the ultimate gift that came from going through this, is she loved me, not for what I achieved or what I was capable of, or because I'm doing and giving. She loved me for my heart. She loved me for my soul. She loved me for my spirit. And that was a gift I think I didn't know I was searching for my whole life, but I realized I had been. And here's where mindset comes into. And I want all of you listening to relate this to any challenge that you're faced with that seems impossible. If you focus on everything that's missing, everything that's wrong, you dwell on the problem, you dwell on your pain, that is not going to help you overcome this challenge. It's going to make you feel worse. So I remember lying in the hospital bed, 25 pounds less than I am now, so sick, so weak, so terrified. But I would catch myself and I would say to myself, Siri, focusing on this is not going to help you heal. So I would change the channel to gratitude. My mom, my amazing mom, would sleep on the couch every single night for 30 plus nights. And I'd feel so grateful that she was there. I feel so grateful for my donors, for my wife that never left my side. And just gratitude was the bridge from despair to hope. Gratitude gave me energy. Gratitude put me on a path where I would focus on, Sabrina, it took me 2 days to move into the hospital because I had vision boards covering every single inch of the walls. I had this poster up. This was my proof that what seems impossible is really possible. And we all, every single one of us, has proof of the times when you overcame something that you never thought you could, times that you've achieved something that seemed impossible. We all have proof. So in times of great despair, you need to stack your proof, not your doubts.
Yes.
And that's up to you. And the vision boards were there to remind me of what I was fighting for. And I think this is really powerful too for anybody that has big dreams or wants to achieve something. At this time, I'm dreaming of surviving. I'm dreaming of life on the other side. And I would close my eyes and I would picture myself running up my favorite mountain, healthy and strong. My wife behind me, she's laughing. I feel the wind on my face. I feel strong. I'm lying in a hospital bed, like this close to death, but I'm in my visualization. I'm feeling strong. I'm feeling this passion. I'm feeling this love. And I visualize that same thing every single day for the whole time I was in the hospital and beyond that. And exactly a year after my bone marrow transplant, I ran that mountain. And I felt that wind on my face. And I felt that strength. I felt that energy. I heard my wife laughing behind me. I celebrated at the top. It is so powerful to go there in your mind every single day, to see yourself succeeding, to see it happening, to make it real, to feel, to sense, to all these things. I believe in that, and I think it's a huge part for anybody to manifest. Take yourself there, see it happening, see yourself succeeding every single day, and I believe there's a great power in that.
Wow. This is it's beautiful. Like just your ability to overcome, as I was doing the research on you, I was really thinking like your story is about something that seemed impossible. Then you did the possible, and now you're reaching to do the impossible again. So it's like a full circle moment. And I think you should just know that, the world is very grateful that you are a soul living on it, because it's an inspiring story. And in a world where so many people are seeking motivation, motivation is very fleeting. You have to learn, you have to be inspired by great stories, and look at the big picture instead of just getting tangled up in a moment. And you said something very powerful, like the stories that we say to ourselves. The truth is we're all envisioning something in our minds. The question is, what are we envisioning in our minds, because it is being created. So thank you for your time today. Where can people find you? If I'm an athlete and I want to be trained by you, do you only coach athletes? Do you coach people that are looking to get to the next level? You coach some very phenomenal, tough people. So I know that your time is very precious, but where can we learn from you and still be inspired by you?
Well, thank you so much, Sabrina. I feel the same about you. I think you're such an inspiration and such a beautiful force of love and light and inspiration. So thank you. You can reach me. I'm on Instagram at Siri Lindley, Twitter at Siri Lindley, Facebook at Siri Lindley. Also, I think it's text fearless to 66866. And I have a little free, mini course on embracing fear and stuff like that. I'd love for you to sign up for that. But yeah, just stay connected to my journey, and I'm definitely going to stay connected to your journey. I feel so blessed to have made this connection, and I want to thank everyone for taking the time to listen. And just continue shining your light, Sabrina, because you are amazing.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.